the cash flows and the rents, et cetera, that are being suggested here are within market ranges. We've discussed with not only the village's assessor, but also external resources that we have. And we've determined that the overall internal rate of return on this at the end of 10 years would be a marginal 1.18%. That's with the TIF assistance that's being contemplated here. Without that, obviously that moves into negative territory and, would not be deemed to be a business decision that would move this project forward. So the real estate that we're looking at here supports the expansion of the operations that's going to be discussed here by Octopi, and is an integral part of what would generate these additional taxes that Todd just explained. I think that's the best I can succinctly cover that. But as you see in the summary of findings, the stream of payments would be $2,925,000 or $975,000 total, but after the present value of that, and then lenders are a little bit being more conservative these days with COVID and the effects on the economy here. So what the lenders are generally looking at is what's the net present value of that cash flow, and then also they're going to take a little bit of a deduction against that as well. We usually see between 10 and 15% of that, and in this case, the discussions with lenders are hovering around the 15% discount. So at the end of the day, the company could borrow $1,850,000 to cover some of the gap on this project. So with that, if there's anything further, otherwise I'll leave this to you all to continue. Does Mr. Wallace have his hand up for a question? Okay.
So with that, Chris, it would be appropriate to hold the public hearing unless you want to take questions from the commission members prior to the public hearing.
Well, actually, I was going to consider allowing Isaac or somebody from Octopi to talk about the project a little more in depth. This has been the numbers and looking at this. So if they would like to talk about it in any depth with the commission and the audience, I think that would be appropriate right
now. Yes, we would love to talk if possible. This is Isaac from Octopi.
Hello, Isaac.
Hi, how are you? Hello all.
So go ahead and maybe describe the project, what you're looking at doing, where things have been with your company, and why you're doing this.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. I'm going to share my screen to a little presentation we prepared. Let me see. Can people see my screen?
Yes.
Thanks. Okay. So first of all, we're pretty thankful to be here. And like we said since the beginning, without the help of the village of Waunakee and multiple parties involved, Octopi would have never happened. So when I came here about 6 years ago with just a business plan and a little bit of money, it was just an idea. And in 5, I would say short, but also long years, we've been able to grow significantly, to the point that we've been able to surpass any expectations that we I originally had. Right now, we're employing over 100 people full time, which I think that's the #1 key or the biggest accomplishment in Octopi's career and the growth that we've had and continue to go for. So given that, I'll just want to share a little bit of our expansion plans and what we're trying to achieve with this next round. So I have it up here. We started as a brewery about 5 years ago. We just turned 5 in November, and we started doing just beverage like beers for the first 2 years. After year 3, we decided to make a big investment into other beverages and did a very large expansion to be able to support that. That was completed in 2019. And given our growth, we've established ourselves as one of the top beverage co-packers in the Midwest, if not the nation. And it's a testament to what our team has been able to do from day one. However, we're in a point that we need to expand. We would like to expand. We would like to cement everything we've done and stay here forever in Waunakee. And able to do that, we're looking at several expansion projects. The biggest one right now is, these are existing facility, which if anybody has seen it, we've expanded significantly from day one. We started with a 16,000 square foot facility, but we're right now finalizing on we're going to be at 60,000 square foot facility in just a short few months. And what we want to do is two big projects. The first one is an expansion of around 95,000 square feet in a current existing lot. That project is about $40 million. So I've never been involved in such a big project, but this is something that we want to do, that we can do, and that we feel that it's going to be great for us and also for where we are right now in the village and our employees. And the second thing that we want to do also next year is where it says future expansion warehouse phase 1. It's about a 200,000 square foot repacking facility. So it's a warehouse with repacking ability. And for people that don't know what repacking is, it's very simple. We take different products and create variety packs. So we take 3 to 6 flavors and put them all into a case. And that's what current innovation in beverages, all the new products are going into variety packing. And right now we have clients sending products to as far as Nashville or California to do the repacking, because there's no repacker facility in the Midwest. And we would like to bring everything in-house and save on transportation. It's better for the environment, packaging costs, etc. Just to give you a little bit of overview where we were and where we are right now. So we're still tied to our beverage industry standards. So we created about 40,000 barrels of beverage in 2019. That was very, very big for us. It put us in like the top 6 production facilities in Wisconsin. But this year we are going to break the 100,000 barrel mark. We're going to be probably number 5. But once we hit that goal, we need to expand because we're going to be at capacity. And the goal after these expansions is to become the third largest production facility in the whole state. After what now is Molson Coors Miller in Milwaukee and City Brewing in La Crosse, and then the idea is for us to be number 3 next year. We have 3, like I said, big expansion projects. The first one is increasing our brew house production. That's already started. It's in the back of our building. If you drive through, you'll see trucks and diggers doing that. Hopefully that'll be done around May. That's about a $10 million of direct investment, how much we're spending on building and equipment, etc. Like I said, the second one is the variety packing repacker facility across the street, which is a $20 million investment. And then the big one is about a $40 million investment on the land that we own. And that's just to increase our production and processing capacity. And like Elis explained, we're looking for tax increment financing to help this project a reality. And the reason we're asking is because there's definitely a financial gap. We've talked to our financing partners, and I believe our banker, even though he's on vacation today, he sent an email today to the Planning Commission, basically expressing how it is important to have this TIF to make these projects a reality. Without it, it just doesn't happen. So overall, like I said, we're going to invest about $68 to $70 million in the next year and a half. On top of the $30 million that we are already invested in Waunakee. So from day one, when like I said, we came with a business plan, we've put already $30 million of direct investment into Waunakee, and we want to put another $70 million. So by the time, hopefully we're done, we'll directly invest about $100 million here, and created about 150 jobs, full-time jobs, well-paying jobs, with above average market salary. $40,000 to $50,000 is our average, depending on the position. Right now we have about 25 current job openings. They range from production to brewing to administrative to accounting, demand capacity, you name it, all over the place, ranging from $40,000 all the way up to $100,000 in salaries plus full benefits. And since we started, we've been really, really cognizant of what type of work environment we want to offer, but also what type of benefits we want to offer. So from day one, we offered health insurance. And as we've been growing, we've been putting back that money into our company and our employees. And we have a full range of benefits, from matching IRA, dental and vision insurance for families, pay time off, sick days, short-term, long-term disability, life insurance, discounts on tap room, etc. So like I said, we want to build a place where our employees are very happy to work here, but also feel fulfilled and also are financially stable to be able to, create a good job for them and their families. So just a little bit about economic impacts. Like I said, these projects are going to create between 40 and 45 initial jobs. That's what we expect to create in the next 2 years after it's built. We plan to actually increase more. Just to give you an example, our first projects, we expected to have about 40 to 45 employees. And like I said, right now we have over 100 employees. So we completely surpassed our expectations of how many people we were going to hire. And we plan to do the same thing. And then 7 direct and indirect induced jobs and over 2 million of increased annual economic impact in the region. And then related to construction, 119 initial construction jobs directly related to this project and over 12 million of economic impact to the region related to just the construction part, which the TIF, we're just focusing on the real estate part. If we focus on the operating part, I think the $70 million that we want to invest will create about $150 to $200 million of indirect economic impact by our raw material suppliers, packaging suppliers, the products that we produce, and the products that our clients sell to the market, retailers, wholesalers, et cetera, until it gets to the hands of the end consumer. So it's a big economic impact for us. Most of that money stays in Wisconsin. As we buy most of our packaging raws, our clients are from Wisconsin or the Midwest. And the but-for test, the TIF in the project, without it, like I said, it wouldn't be feasible. The same thing when we met 6 years ago that, like I said, the village was extremely helpful to help us with TIF. If we didn't get it, it would have never happened. The construction costs, unfortunately, because of COVID, have increased exponentially since it started, about 25%. This project was going to be cost around $10 million. Now it's about around 12.5, if not $13 million when it's all said and done. The credit conditions have definitely changed. They're more conservative. Where we had a deal in place, the bank basically said, you still have the deal, but you have to get TIF and you have to get other forms of help, which we're going right now with other forms of investment, equity, et cetera. We really are looking for help in TIF. And like they said, it's a pay as you go. We're not creating any negative impact. Right now the lot is empty and it's not creating any value. The idea is to build on it. And once we build and we actually fulfill what we said we're going to do, then we would pay the taxes would get back. But then the economic impact would be of all the other things that we do for it, the transportation, employment, sales tax, et cetera, that these businesses will create for the village and for the state for sure. And like I said, there's also a financing gap on the operating entity, but we're looking at other sources like WDC, SBA financing, equity investment, private equity, et cetera. We don't have anything yet approved or in writing. We're talking to all these entities, but every single part is, like I said, it's not just one thing that will make it. It's a lot of different things that make the project go. And we're looking at every other avenue the same way we've looked since the beginning to make this project a reality.
Isaac, this is Kate. Kate, before you move off that slide, can I say a few words on that last slide?
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, Kate,
Great.
if you don't mind, introduce yourself, who you are.
Yeah,
Please.
absolutely. Good evening. My name is Kate Crowley. I am with Baker Tilly, an advisor to Octopi. I'm a partner with Baker Tilly here in Madison. Baker Tilly's a national top 10 accounting and advisory firm, and we've been working with Octopi in this expansion and actually go back to about 6 years ago, helping Isaac and his then small team to choose Waunakee for their initial investment. And I did want to jump in here while Isaac's giving this overview to explain the analysis that Ellers has done in relation to Isaac discussing the financial need and the gap here on this but-for slide. And one thing that's important to know is that Octopi is established as almost all of our manufacturing clients are established, which is to have a separate operating entity from a separate real estate entity. And the reason nearly every one of our manufacturing clients is established that way is because you have different ownership groups very often, as is the case here, between operating and real estate. So you need separate entities for the two, but also for tax structuring purposes. So you can structure them differently, as well as liability. So here, as is most common, Isaac has set up Octopi in that fashion. And Ellers, in doing their analysis of the need for TIF, has appropriately looked at the real estate entity. As they describe, the real estate entity is the one that creates the real asset that pays property taxes, which are the revenue source for TIF. And in doing that, has confirmed that the real estate entity would be charging market rents to the operating entity. And even with that, there is a financial gap that TIF can overcome that. And that is the reason for the request from TIF to make this real estate investment feasible. But that said, as a plan commission, ultimately a village board and taxpayers that might be listening, you may be wondering, well, does the real estate entity, Octopi, the operating entity, need assistance as well? And Isaac explained here, the answer is yes. The operating entity also needs assistance because this is a significant project and it's one that's being done in an environment that's tough, due to cost increases from COVID, as well as credit conditions that limit the amount of debt available to these projects. Isaac mentioned an email today shared from their lender. I think it'll be read later, but just the most important component of it states that in the case of Octopi, an important component to the capital injection is the investment from TIF. This is required for the project to proceed. So with that, you can hear that the bank that's looking at lending for the operating component of this, that to keep those market rents at market, TIF is required on the real estate side to make this entire project feasible. And so I just wanted to jump in and share that perspective.
Thanks, Kate. Then I'll continue on this one. There's just a few more slides left. And then just the property tax impact. Like I said, we will pay, when it's fully projected, we'll pay over $450,000 annually in real estate taxes. The TIF will capture just new property taxes that are created by the Octopi investment. Again, it's right now there's an empty land. There's nothing creating there. Once we build, there'll be taxes created. But for the TIF investment, these taxes would not be generated. It'll just be an empty land. And there's no tax impact to the taxpayers in the village or the school district. We're not generating new taxes. Nobody's getting taxed more. Literally, the way we've seen it is, and it happens, is we build the real estate gets assessed. The next year we get our tax bill, we pay it in full, we get the tax refund back. And like Kate put, the tax available in 2030 are going to be about $440,000 annually. That'll go back to the village. And plus, again, it's from day one, it's all the extra revenue that we'll create by bringing more jobs into Waunakee, more production into Waunakee, more trading to Waunakee. And the other big one is since we started, we've had about 10 people moving to Waunakee, buy houses in Waunakee, establish their families in Waunakee, and grown in Waunakee, from people that come in single, then they get married, raise families here, have kids, etc. And it's been pretty, like I said, incredible impact for Octopi to be able to start from, we started with 6 people, including myself, our first year. And in 5 years, we have over 100, like I said, 100 full-time employees and about 250 people rely on us for their wages and expenses. So like I said, it's the proudest thing that I've ever accomplished with this entity. And that's about it for my presentation. If you have any questions, please let us know.
Okay, thanks, Isaac, for sharing with that. And we're going to, before we ask any questions, I think what's appropriate right now is that we're going to open our public hearing, hear from the public, and get feedback from the public, as well as let you hear what they have to say. That's important, as well as our plan commissioners to hear what the public is thinking on this. So with that, I'm going to open our public hearing up. It is 6:01 on my clock. So if you are interested in speaking to this topic, please raise your hand if you are in the audience, and Tracy will let you in.
I have first hand up is Joel Yeager. Joel, I will allow you to talk if you could unmute yourself.
Go ahead, Joel. Still need to unmute yourself, Joel. There you go. Tracy, from what I'm seeing, he is unmuted, but
That is, oh, now I just muted again. Joel, you are unmuted. Try talking. His microphone must not be working. He shows as unmuted, but we can't hear him.
okay. So what I'd suggest, Joel, is work, and we will come back to you when you raise your hand up again. So let's
Okay.
have another individual in at this point.
Next person I have with a hand raised is just listed as owner. So I will allow that person to talk if they could state their name. Hello, owner? Owner, you are unmuted. If you could try talking, we are not hearing you. Two strikes.
I think this is the first time we've ever had this technical difficulty. So
Yeah.
let's try a different individual and see if see where the issue may be.
Okay, moving on to Robert McPherson.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yep, we've got you, Robert. Go ahead.
Oh, good. I had all the pressure. Robert McPherson, 1703 Alexandria Court. I'm speaking in opposition. My concerns are, well, there's a few concerns. The main concern I have is, I understand that we're looking at the but-for test here. We see on the but-for test that obviously without the money that they wouldn't have the project. I think anybody here could name a ton of projects that without additional funding or sort of ways to work tax revenues and things like that, that their projects would not exist either. So I worry that you're setting a precedent if you allow this to go forward as is. The original brewery project, I mean, started in an area that benefited from TIF. It already got what it needed from TIF. If they want to continue growing, it's not the community's concern. Well, I shouldn't say it's not the community's concern. That's not fair. It's not fair to the community, I should say, that just because a business wants to grow faster than its own income allows it to, that we should be put on the hook for this. And when I say we're on the hook for this, I know we hear a lot about how, there's no tax impact to the village, which is true. We're not paying anything today. However, we're denying tax income to the school district and to the other districts that are covered by the taxing district. And they are going to be denied that income for at least a decade on a project that may not succeed. Working in banking, there's a lot of commercial projects out there. Yes, commercial credit has become more conservative, but I would be concerned that if banks are saying that TIF money is needed to do this, and again, we haven't heard the letter yet to the public, so kind of unfair what I'm saying here, but if they do need additional tax incentive or tax incremental financing to make their project work, I would be very leery of their financial position because liquidity is very available right now. So even with more conservative underwriting, it doesn't make a ton of sense that the community should be put on the hook and that we should absorb some of that credit risk for Octopi to do this project. Maybe they should look for a smaller project that's within their means that doesn't require tax incremental financing. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. And thank you for working on our system right now. So hopefully
Yeah,
we can get that
thanks.
all corrected for everyone else. So, okay. Go ahead, Tracy, next.
We're going to try to go back to Joel Yeager. I'm going to allow him to talk and ask him to unmute. We'll try one more time.
Tracy, it looks like you let in Dustin Drazen.
Oh, I apologize. Hang on. Okay, Joel Yeager, you should be able to speak now. No. Okay. Joel,
This is Kate Crowley. Joel sent me his remarks.
He did.
Tracy said to you too. Is it okay if I read those?
go right
Since he's
ahead.
having audio trouble. Great. And again, this is Kate Crowley from Baker Tilly, just reading an email from Joel Yeager. Joel Yeager, I work at Octopi, born and raised in Waunakee, went to school at UW Eau Claire, and now work at Octopi. My parents also still live in Waunakee. My wife, Kelly, and I just had our first child, Olivia, in February, and we look forward to raising her here in Waunakee. Our employees frequent local establishments for lunch, and we look forward to continuing to do so in the future. Isaac touched on the initial employee growth numbers. As our employee numbers continue to grow year over year and Octopi continues to expand, we will continue to add to the local economy, whether that means employee lunches or whether that means using local businesses like Helen Brand for our water capabilities, Nord Gear for pumps made right here in Waunakee, or partnerships with local nonprofits to help support the village and community growth goals. We are very proud to be a part of the Octopi family, and we look forward to the continued growth within the village of Waunakee. We are in support of the proposed TIF to Octopi and feel this is a reasonable request given Octopi's impact on the local economy. Thank you for your time today.
Okay, thank you, Joel. Go ahead, Tracy, next person in.
I have no more hands raised. If someone else wishes to speak, you may please raise your hand now. I have Julie Yeager. I will allow her to talk and ask her to unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, Julie, go ahead. Is there a
Hi.
relationship to Joel?
Pardon?
Is there a relationship to Joel?
Yes, we are Joel Yeager's parents. Very proud of him.
Okay, you're much better with technology. I'll point that out there right away.
Thanks, Chris.
Go ahead.
You know, Jeff and I have been a part of Waunakee since, 1992. We came here when Joel was just a year old. And I am very impressed. I am also in the finance industry and worked for a commercial real estate company on the west side of Madison for about 11 years. I took the brunt of the 2006, 2008, you know, when things were falling apart. And I am so impressed with Octopi. Yeah, maybe we are a little bit biased, but I see the construction, which my husband is in commercial construction and provides equipment to Octopi through many of their general contractors that they work with. And, you know, they are growing, and you've got vacant land sitting here, and that's an opportunity for this community. And I would hope you guys would all look at that, because in this environment right now, that 14 acres could sit vacant for another, you know, 2, 3, 5 years, who knows? So I think it's an opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Tracy, any others?
Okay, I have owner is back. So we're gonna try this one more time.
Hello.
Hello, we've got you. If you can state your
My name is Mark Clements. I was born and raised in Waunakee, and my parents, Bob and Laura Clements, currently still reside in Waunakee. I was a 2009 graduate from Waunakee High School and moved to La Crosse, Wisconsin to attend college and begin my professional career. Just over a year ago, I was fortunate enough to accept a position with Octopi as their controller and move back to the Waunakee area. I was excited to join Octopi because I saw the potential for growth in my career, and I could tell Isaac, the owner of Octopi, truly cared about his employees and the success of Octopi. Since accepting the position with Octopi, we have gone from about 40 to 45 employees when I started to over 100 employees, as Isaac stated, and hiring, which is a very positive economic impact on the village of Waunakee. That being said, I am very thankful for the opportunity I've been given with Octopi, and I'm very excited what is to come in the future as we continue to grow. I want to thank you guys for your time tonight, and I hope you consider supporting Octopi's expansion with TIF so we can continue to grow in Waunakee for many years to come. I appreciate you bearing with me as we got through those technical difficulties there too. I think the two youngest probably were the two technological, we screwed up there. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Okay, next, Tracy.
I currently have no hands raised.
Okay, while we're waiting, I know we had some that were sent in to us via email to the Plan Commission members that wanted to have them read. Do you have those, Tracy, handy that you could read those?
I do.
Go ahead.
Okay, we will start with Larry Schwen. I'm writing on behalf of Octopi Brewing. I am a senior vice president and commercial lender with the Bank of Sun Prairie and have financed every project for Octopi since its inception. As you are aware, Octopi is planning another very important expansion. As part of the bank's underwriting, we will look for and require additional capital to come into this project. In the case of Octopi, an important component to the capital injection is the investment from TIF. This is required for the project to proceed. I'm unavailable for the meeting as I am out of town. If you could please read this on my behalf, I would greatly appreciate it. Regards, Larry Schwen, SVP, Bank of Sun Prairie. And we also have one from Nick Drusen. I wanted to reach out and let the village know of my family's support for the upcoming Octopi expansion TIF request. I will try to call into the Plan Commission meeting this evening as well. My family and I moved to Waunakee back in 2017 and have been frequent visitors to Octopi. We appreciate that is a family-friendly establishment and that this was our go-to for dinner on Friday nights with the kids ages 3 and 5 before the pandemic. The various events they host throughout the year have also been great weekend activities for us and our neighbors. On a professional level, I have worked directly with Isaac and Octopi to provide SBA 504 financing and multiple projects since inception. Having worked in economic development for the past 13 plus years, this is probably one of the better success stories I can point to. The job creation alone is exceptional, along with the fact that it is a minority-owned business. I think it is also something to take pride in, knowing beverages, mostly beer, are being consumed all over this country, which were made in Waunakee, Wisconsin. I know the village has provided crucial support in the past, and I hope they will continue to do so going forward. Thank you for your time and consideration. Nick, Haley, Noah, and Henry Drusen. And this one is from Frank Gorham. Just wanted to let you know, as a Waunakee resident, that I support the Octopi expansion as a community member and as a construction partner. Frank Gorham, Vogel Brothers Building Company. Rich Stoffels. Good afternoon. As a resident of Waunakee, I would like to express my support for the expansion of the Octopi Brewery. Our community needs the support from local government to continue growing with the proper businesses. Businesses like Octopi that support the community just as much as the community supports them. Thank you. Rich Stoffels, Vogel Brothers Building Company. Next, we have Bruce Kaufman. I wanted to send an email expressing my support for the approval of the additional TIF for Octopi Brewing. Octopi has become a destination point for both Waunakee residents and those outside the community. From what I have read, Octopi has grown quickly and created a significant number of well-paying manufacturing jobs. Manufacturing jobs are important in a down economy. Job creation and the additional traffic into Waunakee are good for other businesses in the community as well. Having craft beer loving friends in other parts of the country tell me they are drinking beer produced in Waunakee is great for the community image. I do believe the village should be supporting local businesses that are creating jobs and bring positive visibility to Waunakee. I think the economic impact of Octopi in Waunakee is high, and that it is in the best interest of Waunakee to approve the proposed TIF tonight. That was Bruce Kaufman. And this is Rogine Anderson. I would like to express my support for the Octopi expansion project and encourage the village of Waunakee to do the same by offering tax incremental funding for this project. In addition to helping Octopi secure the investments they need, it helps to promote the village of Waunakee as a business-friendly community. Octopi's expansion would also add additional job opportunities for current residents who may be struggling to find employment. Thanks for all you do to help strengthen and grow our community. Sincerely, Rogine Anderson. And that is all I have.
Okay, then let's check and see if anybody has their hand up, and then we'll go from there.
I have no other hands raised.
Okay, then going once, going twice. No hands. We're going to close our public hearing at this time. It is 6:16. So thank you for all those who had comments to share with us tonight. We appreciate all of those. So I'm going to go around the horn with all of our plan commissioners. We can ask questions of our attorneys, Isaac, his staff, each other, and Todd, and now I lost, is it Fred or Frank? I can't remember.
Frank.
Frank, thanks Frank. With Frank with us. So I'm going to go around and I'm going to start with Phil Willems.
Wow, getting to go first. I guess I kind of have mixed emotions. I'm very happy with Octopi. I know we've helped them out on 2 previous TIFs, and now we're considering the 3rd one. I at first thought, no, not at all. That, you know, they've been helped enough. But then people around town that I've talked to and queried said, maybe we could meet them halfway, or, you know, let's think it over. And then other people have said, well, you know, people aren't knocking down the door buying this land that we have in the business park. Maybe we should take advantage of this. So I'm sort of leaning more towards helping out somewhat on this TIF thing. I'd like to ask, maybe would they consider taking half of the increment instead of all of it? That's my thoughts so far on it.
Okay, thanks, Phil. Isaac or Todd, maybe you guys could address that question that Phil just posed.
Yeah, for sure. I thank you, Phil. I really appreciate it. And I know you've been super supportive from day one. So like, again, we really thank you for your support. The financial gap is unfortunately more than what we're asking for, but we're asking what we think is reasonable to help us get over the hump and get it going. We're asking for, like, I think less than half of the lifetime of the TIF district. So ideally, we would love to start paying taxes when there's still life left in the new TID or the amendment to the TID. So I would say I wish we could ask for less. Unfortunately, right now is we really need all the help we can get to make these projects a reality.
Okay, Todd Taves, any comments from your side on that?
I would just add again, you know, as Frank mentioned, the amount of TIF assistance that is being requested just barely provides for a positive return on that component of the project. So, you know, diminishment of that to any degree takes an already marginal situation and would further worsen it.
Okay, thank you. All right, then moving on, I'm going to go to Brian Wallace.
First question is, what is the status of the existing TID number 3?
So the district, which the first year was 2017, currently actually has a negative value of roughly minus $100,000. So in other words, there's less value on the ground there than there was on the date that the district was created. No project costs have been expended within the district other than the cost to create it and you know, some minimal annual administrative expense. So at the end of 2019, the district was about $18,000 fund balance deficit. So, you know, as was mentioned, it's essentially an idle site at this point.
So the question that's related to that then is, if the because basically what you have is you have an existing TID number 9, and I'll get to that in a moment, but you have the proposed addition to number 9, which actually already falls into TID district number 3. Can't there be something from TID 3 that helps to potentially provide that financing?
So under a TID law, when you're within the last 5 years of a tax increment district's life, you can no longer make new expenditures within a TID. So in the case of TID number 3, that district reached the end of its expenditure period.
How many years long is a TID normally?
June 5th of this year.
No, how long are they normally?
They're either 20 years or 27 years, depending on the type. Both
Okay,
in the
so
case,
earlier you had mentioned that this was started in 2017, or did I mishear that?
2017 was the first year for this tax increment district.
So that's been 3 years.
Correct.
And it's within 5 years of the end?
Brian, I think, Todd, I think you were speaking to TID 8 or 9 instead of 3 at the beginning there. He asked about TID 3 to start with.
Correct. So TID number 3, that district was created in 2000. It had a 23-year life. It reached the end of its expenditure period on June 5th of 2018. So we're now in the time frame where you can no longer incur new project costs within the district. The other thing to take into consideration, notwithstanding that, is that, as I mentioned initially, anything that's constructed next year will not actually generate taxes until the 22 levy for 23 budget, and 2024 is the final year of tax increment district number 3. So, two
So
issues.
was the original when Occupy first went in there, was that did that fall under that TID 3 when it first built?
That's correct. So the existing facility is within TID number 3, and the property taxes will continue to flow to that.
What's the status of that payback then?
TID number 3, there are 2 pay-as-you-go obligations for Occupy, as well as other project related costs not related to Occupy. Those will be paid off in 2023 and 2024 respectively. So the district is expected to close in 2024, having recovered all of its project costs.
Okay, because right now it's at a negative, or were you referring to number 9?
No, I was referring to number 9.
Okay. So, and Chris, maybe you can, or Brian or Kevin can probably enlighten me a little bit. I'm trying to think back to Trending Now's building there that they put up earlier this year that was approved, that I take it did not take any financing on then. Is that correct?
I didn't catch the first part of your question. So which
Well,
one?
when we approved Trending Now earlier this year, which is in this TID 3, I don't recall financing being part of that equation.
That is correct. I don't believe Trending Now requested any TIF assistance.
Okay, all right. And then I guess related to what Phil said, we already have an existing TID number 9, which encompasses a large portion of what Occupy is looking to do here. And if I go back down, and I know that Isaac had a slide that I don't think that was in our information, but it showed roughly 3 different expansions or 3 different projects here. One was 10 million, one was 20, and I think the total was 38 or something like that. If I recall correctly, was the proposed addition only like 20 million?
Well, there's 3 projects. 10 and 40 are in the current location that doesn't have any more TID. So 50 million out of the 70 are in the current one, and then only 20 would be in the TID number 9.
Even with that large, okay. All right.
Yeah, only 20 out of this total 70 would be in the one that still has a lifetime.
Okay. I have no other questions.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Brian Malich.
Most of mine were, really about TID 3 and the way it overlays. So Brian kind of stole anything that I wanted to ask there. So beyond that, no, I don't have any other questions.
Okay, Kristen Runge.
Yeah, thank you. Phil asked the question that I was going to ask, that if it was possible to meet halfway. I don't have any other questions, so thanks.
And Chris Thomas.
Do we know how often this financing is requested for expansions rather than a new business starting? Is this irregular, or is this kind of common?
Todd, I would go to you, Todd Taves, or Frank, I guess, either one.
I mean, there's no statistics kept statewide in terms of when TIF is requested, how many it is for new businesses versus expansions. I mean, we certainly see that in both regards.
How about
Yeah,
just in
I would
Waunakee?
just add that there are, you know, the project costs on this, the equipment for this is quite expensive. And as Isaac mentions, they're looking at almost $70 million investment versus a, you know, a $2.7 million TID ask, which is less than 4% of the total cost. So they're expending a lot of money in equipment on top of the buildings, et cetera. And the portion of the TIF support is not a huge amount, but it is necessary as part of the capital stack. And as you know, as Kate mentioned on some of the other fronts, they're looking at other sources too. But TIF is an important component of their financing.
Chris, I got a couple other questions when you get a chance.
Okay, Chris Thomas, continue. If you have any others.
Yeah, so it was mentioned that COVID was kind of a concern here. That I guess my question is, if there was no COVID, would you still be requesting this financing?
Probably yes, but now COVID is, you know, it was very needed before. It's much needed now. Like I said, COVID restrictions have made it just put some more hurdles to get these projects done. But I would say the project is massive. Like I said, when we started, we were talking about a $5 million investment. Now we're talking about a $70 million investment. So when the projects get this big, we definitely need, like I said, you know, help from the Village of Waunakee, SBA, USDA, WDC, et cetera. But what we can say is that every single time we've asked and we've shared our projections, we've said what we're going to do, we actually do it. And like I said, it's a pay as you go. If we don't do anything, there's no harm, no foul, nothing gets paid out. We have to deliver on the construction and the size and the quality of the building and the actual tax to make it happen. If we don't deliver on that, we don't get anything.
I have no more questions.
So before I get back to you, Brian, I'm just going to let everybody know, it's hot off the press, actually, from the Department of Revenue. It was revised here. I have the tax incremental financing manual. I suggest you all go get that. Actually, what I will do is send it to Todd and he can forward it out to all of you. But there's some very good information here on understanding TIF and all the regulations, as well as statistics that Brian or Chris was just asking about. You know, in 2019, there were 68 new TIDs certified in the state of Wisconsin. So across the state, that's what we were saying. 24 were mixed use, 18 rehabilitation, conservation, 14 blight, 10 industrial, 1 environmental remediation, and then 1 town. I'm not sure what that one means. Todd, you could probably explain that one to me, but that's what that's in there. So again, I'll send that guide to Todd and he'll forward it out to you guys so you guys can have that. It's a good piece for you. It's not the greatest of reading, but it's only 44 pages long, so not too bad. Isaac, quick question, a couple questions for me, and this is more for the public that's out there to say, you know, wow, they're doing great, you know, they're winning awards, they're doing fabulous. Why would they need assistance at this time? So that is my question right now. What's the difference between doing it now with TIF or not doing it right now because you can't get TIF and having to wait? What would that mean to you?
Basically, it's lost opportunity. If we don't do it now, the chance of the project happening become less and less, to the point that maybe next year the opportunity for our current clients are not there anymore, and we just don't do the expansions. Right now we have clients and prospective clients that really wants us to get this project done. If we don't do it, they'll go somewhere else, and then some other state or other village or other city will take on that opportunity. So the risk of not doing it is just missing out and not doing anything.
Okay, then the other one, I'm not sure if it was one of the residents or Isaac that made the comment, but something about that there hasn't been anybody that wants to build, and there's nothing that's going to be built if this doesn't happen. That's an assumption that nobody else would want to come into that piece of property and build on it at this point. So I think that's a pretty large assumption. Granted, that project or that property has been sitting there now for, when did the TID open? When did our industrial park open over that way? It's probably at least 20 years, Phil, is that fair? If not 25. So that property has been sitting there not generating taxes. On the flip side of this, in thinking about this, what was the total, Todd Taves, if you could share, what is the total TIF request we've had from Octopi from the very beginning? Do we know what that number is? For their first startup?
There are, in the schedule I have, the two PAYGO bonds for Octopi are in the amounts of 197,972, call it 198,000, and 250,000.
So you can see this request is more. Part of the reason that the TIF probably Isaac didn't request more from the previous TID is there was no money left in that TID to really request. Brian, that was kind of to your question, both Brian's earlier. There wasn't very much in there for them to draw from when they came for that request. They just got in before it was closing, as a matter of fact, where they could even ask for it. So those numbers added to this number, we're around 4 million on $100 million investment into the community. So I look at that as a 4 to 5% that we're investing into that as a community if we choose to do this, which is for what it brings to the community outside of just that little investment. If we think of other investments that we could make in our community and the revenues, the jobs, everything that go with it, this is one of those shining stars. So in my opinion, I was fortunate to join the lieutenant governor who chose to come to Octopi because of the success of that startup and the use of TIF. So from where I sit on this right now, my initial response was similar to Phil's in that, well, we've already given them assistance. But when we look at the dollars that we gave them in assistance, it wasn't that we were giving them big numbers at that time. This is a little bit bigger, but looking at the length of time before it pays itself off, 10 years is not a long, is it 8 or 10? I can't remember right now, Todd.
2030 to be it.
10 years basically from now. So realistically, 9, we're almost into 2021. So, I think that there's some significant merit to this request. And I don't think it's out of what's the word I want to use? I think it's a reasonable request is the word I would use at this point. So that's really where my take is on this. And my questions were to Isaac there. I see this as one of the things that we don't have a lot of in Waunakee is tourism, that people are coming out to our community. And this is one of those things that has been generated to bring tourism into our community. I see that as a strong thing. As Isaac mentioned, he has 10 employees that have moved into Waunakee, purchased homes in Waunakee. That's a big deal if we're having corporations that come in and want to. I was speaking with Todd earlier today. I believe this is going to be the second or third largest facilities within our Nordgear would be the other, and then the old Marshall Erdman buildings, where Isaac has been using, by the way, and renting because he didn't have the space on his property. So, and those are been taken over by Dane Manufacturing. So we're seeing this growth, and the biggest question in my mind for answering is that but-for test, and whether or not this meets that. And to I think it was Robert's comments about, well, why wouldn't everybody ask for this? We have other businesses that would want to expand more quickly as well. And are we going to do this for them? Are we setting a precedent to do that? I'm not sure if I can answer that right now. I'm going to have to think that one over a little bit, but I do feel, based on what I've seen, what Isaac Bank has stated, that most of the people that were in support tonight, yes, they didn't really say anything about but-for. They talked about it's a great business, and they're happy they're here. It's provided jobs. It's done those things, which are part of what this is supposed to do. When we look at, there's 3 different components, and that's one of the components, is it a job producer? And it absolutely, it has been. It's far exceeded what we had originally put in for our investments. So I don't want to sound like I'm the big cheerleader for this, but I see a lot of value for our community in having this business. And You know, we've helped them, and I think this could get it over the top, that this just, we become a bigger name, a friendly community to other businesses coming in. So we don't necessarily have a piece of property that sits throughout past where there was even TIF potential. That's not necessarily good. So, and nobody's going to be upset about seeing our name on all the cans and things dispersed throughout the world, which is what this does. Our name is on every one of those. Waunakee is listed on there. Is that right, Isaac? Bottled in?
Yes, this year we'll do about 60 million cans or bottles with Waunakee, Wisconsin on them. And next year we're projecting to do about 100 million cans or bottles going to 48 states in the US and about 10 countries in Europe primarily.
So I would say that Isaac has been 85% for me since we opened this up. You know, the 15%er, some of the things were just timing things and cleaning up pallets and doing those kinds of things, which, okay, those things happen. I wasn't sure about how the food cart was going to work outside the building. And that it seems to have worked very well. But that's really not what we're talking about right now. We're talking about, does this make sense for us as a community to provide this incentive or not? So that said, Brian, can you walk us through what the whole process is? And maybe that's good for the public to hear too, where we are in this TID process, or Todd? Oh, Brian Wells, go ahead.
Yeah, so a couple of questions, further questions, I should say, and maybe Isaac can answer these. I'll throw a couple at you here. How many employees that work at Occupy live and reside in Waunakee?
Well, the last census we did were 10.
10 employees.
Yeah.
Okay. And this might be somebody else. Well, Isaac, first of all, if you're looking at the total project and you talked about $70 million here, we're showing a added value of $20 million. Is that just the projected land value once the entire project is done?
It's just the real estate, the actual buildings. The rest, like Frank Roman said, it's mostly equipment.
Okay, but again, it's at the time of completion of the entire project, right?
That's correct.
And what's the timeline on that?
If everything goes great, we hope to have them up and ready by the end of next year.
Including the facility across the road on in the original TID 9?
That's the goal. The only thing I want to add is we also have a really, really nice solar and battery project. We had some grants by the USDA and PSC that we want to take advantage to do it by next year. It'll cover about 30% of the project. We'll still put about $1 million into it, but it will be the first one of its kind in Dane County, where the solar would feed the battery and would help actually with frequency regulation to the grid. So I don't know if anybody was near today, but we had a pretty bad outage in the morning. Our battery would connect to the grid and would help out with those gray outs. So that's also part of the project in the warehouse that I don't think we've said it before, that we would like to do also by the end of next year.
Okay.
And Brian, I guess this may be more for Kevin or Brian, but if something happens in the timeline and they don't do any of the facility across the road, now we're talking probably at a minimum half of the value or the added value, which is going to extend that payout time, correct?
Well, so what's before? I mean, a lot of the discussion tonight has been about the pay-as-you-go development incentive that would be provided to Occupy. You know, that is something that's still, you know, that's an agreement that would have to go to the village board. Now, we would typically, in past cases, when we've had a development incentive pay-as-you-go, there's language in there that says that the developer needs to complete the project pursuant to the site plan. And so one of the things that we're going to have to talk to them about is, well, what happens if you get part of this done, but not all of it done? And we need to work through those negotiations. And the reason why that's relevant to the question you just asked, Brian, is, if somebody doesn't get a project done, that can negatively impact the developer in one of two ways. One, they may not even then qualify for the development incentive payments out of the municipal revenue obligation because they have not completed the project consistent with the site plan that the Plan Commission approved. The other is the scenario that you just identified, where maybe part of the expansion is done, but not all of it. And then that necessarily impacts the payback. And, lots of times you can have negotiations on that where, and I'm just throwing this out there. I mean, as an example, if the work was completed on the southern half of Unique Drive, but then the expansion does not occur on the northern half for some reason, then that always can potentially impact the amount of the development incentive too. But that's all essentially terms and conditions that will be addressed in the TIF agreement. And that's, not before you guys tonight.
Is that something that comes back to us then, Brian?
The TIF agreement, the TIF agreement would not come to the Plan Commission. It would just go to the village board.
All right. And then
Brian, I would just add that what the Plan Commission is doing is setting up the framework for the next step. And it's really up to the village board. And we heard some board members ask some questions in terms of what the contributions would be. And there's some further negotiations and conversations that I think will have to take place at the board level. But you're setting up the framework, and you can see that from a planning perspective. This is an appropriate place. It's an appropriate way of funding this type of project. But you're not actually in that part of the negotiations of the developers agreement and making that final decision on what the full participation will be by the village.
Okay, so maybe this question is at a higher level then, but if the TID is created and Isaac has said it himself, and we heard from a couple other folks that, there's still some avenues of funding that has to be figured out here. So if we go through the process of creating this TID and maybe some other component of financing doesn't happen and the project doesn't happen, what happens to this? Does it still stay in place, or does it just get closed, or how does that process work?
Well, that's it still essentially stays in place. And quite honestly, that's how TID 9 was initially created. TID 9 was initially created for Tormach because Tormach was looking, and in fact, I think may have even purchased this land that we're talking, that's part of TID 9 now. But then my understanding is that there were certain global impacts regarding, and I don't want to get too far over my skis here, but on the cost of steel potentially and on other tariffs that then impacted their ability to expand to the point that it has not expanded. And so my understanding is that's why Octopi is working with Tormach on the potential acquisition of this land now, is because Tormach initially thought it was going to expand, but is not able to.
Okay. Thank you.
Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, since we're really not at this point going to, our committee is not going to be negotiating TIF and the TIF incentive and et cetera, I'd like to think about making a motion to move it forward to the village board by making my motion to approve the resolution PCR 20-02, recommending the approval of the amended boundaries of TID 9 and the proposed project plan amendment to the village board. This is not a big deal in that we're not committing to the TIF dollars or anything. We're committing it to further study by the board as I see it. Is that true?
Yes, so that's a motion by Phil Williams. Do we have a second for that? So Kristen Runge has her hand up, so she's seconding it. Any future or further discussion from any of the commission members? Please raise your hand if you do. Okay, seeing none, roll call vote, please. Tracy?
Chris Zellner,
Yes.
Chris Thomas,
Yes.
Brian Wallace,
Yes.
Bill Willems,
Yes.
Brian Malish,
Yes.
Kristen Runge.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody in the public for the public hearing and giving your comments to us. Next, we have consideration and possible action resolution designating proposed amended boundaries and approving a project plan amendment for tax incremental number 9, Village of Waunakee. Kevin?
I think you actually addressed
Did we-
that.
I think we addressed 1 and 2 in the same thing. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
Okay, that's what, okay, thank you. Next, we have another public hearing, discussion action on a site plan and conditional use permit to exceed the height limit of 45 feet for the Octopi Brewery Packaging Addition, 1131 Unique Drive. Who's introducing this one?
I can introduce this, Chris.
Kevin, go ahead.
And it really is just, there's 2 parts to this agenda item. We didn't split them up because I thought you'd want to talk about them together. And it's the site plan approval for the Octopi expansion on the current site, including that parking lot expansion on the north side of Unique. And the conditional use is to exceed the permitted use, which is 45 feet, up to 55 feet. Initially, they had asked for 56 feet, so you may see some reference in the packet that was regarding a request for 56 feet. We explained to them that the commission can only allow to up to 45 feet, and they'd have to seek a variance if they wanted to go above that 55 feet. And they've indicated to us that they're not going to need they think they can make it work with the 10 foot over the 45 or at the 55 feet. And also there was a substantial amount of discussion and comments in your packet, and we had a lot of follow-up meetings because initially we didn't know if this would be ready for the Plan Commission meeting for consideration tonight, because we were really stuck on one portion, and that was stormwater control. We needed to have our full review, get our consultants comfortable with that. The stormwater can not only handle the 100-year flow, but actually bypass anything over the 100-year flow without impacting the neighbor's property. And that's that new subdivision that John Turney has started on. So with that, Tracy, why don't we bring up a couple pages, we can have Isaac or any of his team members go through their proposed expansion.
Yep. Thank you, Kevin. So this is the one that we have prepared, which is the addition to our west side, to the land that we own. This is not the warehouse. This is the about 100,000 square feet addition. Basically, there's several components. The first one is increasing our office space to add more space for another 50 full-time employees. The second part is, of course, adding to our QA/QC control, quality control, and assurance. Increasing our lab capabilities and R&D. And the biggest one, which takes the majority of the space, is increasing our production and processing capacity. And the variance is what you see right in the front. The big building is literally, it's just to put big tanks. As we grow in size, we need bigger tanks, and we want to put them in the best possible shape. So we're gonna do a really nice enclosed building with a lot of glass so people can see into them, and make sure that they look great from outside as well as inside. I don't know if I don't have control, Kevin, so I don't know if you want to scroll over. These are just more pictures of the front, the side, and the back of the building. Just more loading docks in the back. To the front, it's going to look very similar to our current one, and to the side, it's very similar to what we currently have right now.
Isaac, Doug indicated that he had updated plans, and I was going to let him screen share and go through those.
Sure, go ahead. Thank you.
Unless Doug's not ready.
Sorry, I'm here. I just gotta unmute myself here. We had a lot of conversation with technical staff, and so
Hey, Doug, if you don't mind, if you could introduce yourself for the
Sure.
members as
Thank
well
you.
as the audience.
Thanks, Chris. My name is Doug Powell. I'm an architect, and I've been working with Isaac since 2017. And we've worked with him on all of his recent projects, except for his original building. So I'm happy to keep working with him, obviously. And you know, he's always doing something exciting. So, and this is no different. The site plan here is a bit of an adjustment from the one in your packet, and I'll just point out the main differences. One thing you'll notice is that there's a large parking lot across the street from the current property. That is to accommodate the parking needs for the facility based on the area ratios that are required by the covenants. And a few things that we've addressed since receiving staff comments was to show the dimensions for the setbacks and to show that we're not parking within the parking setbacks. We've relocated the crosswalk to better accommodate pedestrian traffic. We're showing where our wastewater settling tank is going, and I don't have the utility plan here, but that indicates where we'll have our sanitary connection and our sampling manhole out here. We've located a proposed transformer location in case we need to add capacity to the site. And then we're indicating a screen wall along the loading dock, which is required in the covenants that requests that we screen the loading docks. And then we prepared a couple of 3D image exhibits just to show how the screening works and how it works with the landscaping that will be there. And I can submit these things to the village to kind of distribute to this commission, but that's kind of the highlights of the updated site plan that we've prepared since our last few meetings.
And Doug, could you just touch on the request for the conditional use from the 45 to 55 feet and confirm that the 55 will work?
It does. And we've lowered the building and brought it down to the 55 feet maximum. I don't have an exhibit to illustrate that, but I can confirm it works for us. And we will submit an updated elevation and sections that show that we're within the setbacks, or the height limits rather, sorry.
Okay, any other comments or presentation within this? Todd? Kevin? Jason?
Just that I
Brian?
think we're ready for the public hearing.
Okay, I didn't know if you guys had any additionals before we open the public hearing. So, okay, I'm gonna open the public hearing. That it is 6:55. Hopefully we'll have zero technical difficulties with this run. So if you would like to, please raise your hand and Tracy will allow you in for those in attendance.
I am looking and I see no hands raised. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand.
All right, going once, going twice. Okay, then I'm going to close the public hearing portion. It is 6:55 within this. All right, plan commissioners, questions for, I'm going to start this time if you guys don't mind. I usually wait till the end, but I'll just start. Kevin, is this height anything different than what we've seen with any of other buildings? For example, Nordgear, did they go right up to around 55 as well? I for some reason feel that was the case over there as well.
Yeah, that's why I remember it as well.
Okay, so we're not setting a precedent by allowing this. It's legal for us to go up to the 55 for them to request it, correct? There's no problems with this.
Correct.
Brian?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And the only thing I wanted to point out is, when you go back and when the village had made its changes regarding, height, we made those changes for a number of districts. And when it comes to the light industrial district, we placed fewer restrictions on issues related to the height of the building. I think going back to those discussions, it was essentially, yeah, we're going to be okay with, a little bit taller buildings if they're industrial uses versus going back to, discussions regarding things downtown. So when you look at the draft conditional use permit, that is on pages 39 and 40 of your packet. When you look at section 2, the A and B subsections, those are the only two restrictions placed on height within our code. One is that it can't go higher than 55 feet. And in this instance, they're requesting to go to that height. And the other is the setback. And so I think that's relevant for purposes of the discussion. I do agree with Kevin that I think there's probably at least one other building in the industrial park that goes up to 55 feet. And to the extent with respect to precedent, when it comes to going up to 55 feet in other districts, you do have that ability. Just because you do it here doesn't mean that you have to for others. Although, again, it may make sense if it ever comes up again in the industrial district.
So a small concern of mine is just that the fact that we do have residential over here, is the portion going to be right up, or is it going to come into play, I guess, for the housing that's going to be there? And I know we've had the discussion with the housing development that is placed there, that is right next to here. But I just want to know if maybe there's been any conversations with the Tierneys in regards to this. Kevin, go ahead. You're muted though.
I am sorry. I was going to refer to Jason because that's a question that we asked at tech staff that we wanted a discussion on. So I think he's prepared to answer that question.
Yeah, I think that this is something. So the setback from the property line is 50 feet. And this isn't something that's raised big concerns. Everyone's been aware from the beginning, meaning Tierney and the creation of that housing development to the south came after, of course, the business park, and the potential for heights of this height were known. That additional 10 feet, in my opinion, doesn't make a big difference. This is more or less to the north of that property line. So in terms of shadow issues, I wouldn't expect problems or concerns around that. So from a staff standpoint, we don't have any major concerns about the impact of the height. It is what it is. It'll be visible. It'll be there, but not a huge issue.
Okay, thank you. That's my questions. I'm going to go with Brian Malich.
Appreciate the height discussion. The only other question that I had, and I'm trying to wrap my head around, stormwater management on the site, and then maybe stepping back regionally. I guess regionally is the site intended to essentially flow down towards that retention pond kind of south of the Tormach building?
Yeah, so yes, so originally the stormwater is handled with the external pond. So, it generally flows to the, if we bring up the site plan, we can show the direction of the stormwater. But the regionals, they need to manage their own stormwater on the site in terms of the parking lot and the impervious areas. But more importantly to us was to really allow and really confirm that they can properly really provide for the overflow for anything over 100-year storms, so we don't have any flooding on neighboring properties. So they've been able to demonstrate that there's room and there's accommodations in order to carry that flow for anything even if it's over 100-year flood, so that it does not leave their property and stays within that 50-foot stormwater easement.
Okay. All right. No, that was my only other question.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Brian. Chris Thomas.
I have no questions at this time. I think it looks fine.
Okay, Kristen Runge.
No questions for me.
Phil Willems.
Really, I guess it's a statement more than a question. I thought our original reason for the 45 feet height was water pressure and ability to deliver water above that point. So if there's no problem with us supplying pressure to sprinklers and etc., and if we're not destroying anyone's view, I think the height issue is moot.
Okay, and Brian Wallace.
Yeah, the only question I had, well, two questions really. The 45 feet is actually our guidance, but they can ask for that 10. It's just carte blanche, they can ask for that. Is that correct?
Yeah,
they
Brian's
can
gonna
ask
tell you
for
it's
it.
asked for. They don't necessarily have to provide it. They have to satisfy there's certain, as part of the conditional use, you'll have to evaluate that to make sure that they're not having impact on, go ahead, Brian. You can probably answer it better than
Well,
I
so
can.
there essentially are different standards that we're looking at, and we've kind of touched on some of them. I mean, some of the standards are essentially that by the section B, anything that's over 45 feet has to be set back a minimum of 30 feet from the road right of way. When you get into the what I would say are our standards that are our code, we're talking about things like allowing them to go over 45 feet to 55 feet is not going to be detrimental to public health issues or public safety issues. It's not going to negatively impact neighboring property. And so I think that's why it's relevant that some Plan Commission members brought up the potential impact on the adjacent residential neighborhood. It's not going to impede the orderly or normal development within the industrial park. I think we can certainly talk about that more, but I certainly don't see how allowing the building to go over 45 feet up to 55 feet would negatively impact any of the adjacent property owners in the industrial park. Making sure that there's not a negative impact on utilities. Phil's already touched on that, and we haven't heard anything from Waunakee Utilities because they were involved in the staff meeting when we were discussing this. They didn't have any concerns, but it's those types of kind of standards in our code in section 133-936 that if you grant the conditional use permit and allow it to go up to 55 feet, you will be saying, yes, we don't have any concerns with those standards. And at staff level, we don't have those concerns.
Do we have, and I don't want to get too far out in the weeds here, but do we have any setback requirements based on height? Okay, so if we are typically allowing 45 feet and there's a certain setback, by expanding to 55 feet, does that change what that setback should be?
So we did if you about 2 years ago now, I'm going to say, we modified our code so that we tried to have as consistency within different districts as it related to okay, we're going to have a certain height that you can have in the district. And then if you go above that height, you're going to have to get a conditional use permit. And I'm just trying to find it right now for some of the other districts, maybe in the more commercial or residential. But I do believe that we did address that as a specific standard, what you just talked about right now, which is, okay, if you're going to go higher than X feet within a different district, then what impact does that have on setbacks? And for example, right now, I'm just calling up. So, I mean, for example, in the C1D district, which is downtown, well, we have the parts of the building that are above 45 feet in height shall be set back a minimum of 30 feet from the road right of way. And so we have that same condition within the CUP that's been drafted and for the light industrial district. In that other district, we also identified certain standards that related to what can be above 45 feet. In other words, for the C1D district, it says the total surface square footage of the parts of the building that is above 45 feet cannot exceed 25% of the total square footage of the first floor of the building. In other words, with that type of standard, we were trying to limit the amount of the structure, I guess, from that can be above 45 feet. But as we were going through the changes to the village zoning code and as it applied to the different height issues for the light industrial district, we didn't, the Plan Commission and the village board didn't impose, for example, that condition as part of going over the 45 feet.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, Brian, I just add, I found it in our code, and Brian is right. In fact, he mentions as part of the CU approval. So there are 9 standards that you have to really find that they meet when they ask for this conditional use permit. And I think in the future we'll just throw that in the packet so you have those. But I think Brian really did a good job of highlighting what those are.
Okay, Chris Thomas,
Nope, no questions.
Phil Willems?
I guess it's motion time.
It is.
Motion to approve site plan subject to all staff comments satisfied to the satisfaction of the village engineer.
Okay, motion by Phil Willems. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Chris Thomas. Two other guys raised their hand, but they were too slow for Chris. So we've got a motion and a second. Any other comments? Please raise your hand. Seeing none. Roll call, please, Tracy.
Chris Zellner,
Yes.
Brian Wallace,
Yes.
Chris Thomas,
Yes.
Brian Malish,
Yes.
Phil Willems,
Yes.
Kristen Runge.
Yes.
Motion carried. And then we have a second motion.
Oh, yes, that is, oh, I'm sorry, motion to approve the conditional use permit as presented.
Okay, we have a motion by Phil Willems. Do we have a second? Brian Wallace got his hand up really fast that time. That one to Brian Wallace.
Second.
With a second. And any other comments, please raise your hand. Okay, roll call vote, please, Tracy.
Chris Zellner,
Yes.
Brian Wallace,
Yes.
Chris Thomas,
Yes.
Brian Malish,
Yes.
Phil Willems,
Yes.
Kristen Runge.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, then moving on, discuss and take action on site plan for Kramer Project Lot 2 Woodland Crest Development. Kevin?
Yeah, Tracy, is Jeff, oh yeah, Jeff Kramer's on. If you could bring him in as a panelist. So when you went through not to throw you off a little bit here, but initially we had the site plan approval on here for site 1 and for site 2. But the site 2 with the drive-through requires a conditional use permit. And so that'll be on for next month. And so really, I just ask that you not consider the comments for the drive-through at this point. That's something we'll take up at the next meeting. And Jeff, I don't know if you are in a position where you can want to share your screen, or you can have Tracy bring up parts of the site plan as needed.
Yeah, if Tracy would bring it up, that'd be great. I had one question while that's happening. So we're talking about just building 2 right now, and that's for the SIP approval, Kevin, not site plan approval.
SIP and site plan are basically one and the same.
Okay. Okay.
Is there a specific page you want up, Jeff?
Yeah, if you start with the site plan, I'm just going to walk through what changes we made just so everyone's aware of it, and then I can talk about building 2. Here we go. Okay, those of you who don't know, I'm Jeff Kramer with Kramer Development. I'm the developer of this project. I actually just acquired the property 2 weeks ago now. So now I'm the owner of the property, and Forward Development sold the property to me. So they were involved prior to this. The site plan that we had approved previously for the overall project did not have a drive-through. And the reason for that was we had a tenant that was looking at the south end of building 1, and they did not need a drive-through. When COVID hit, they really were concerned about the ability for us to put this project together. And lot 1 is or building 1, sorry, is a multi-tenant building. It'll probably have 6 to 8 different tenants in it. And so in working with that one tenant, we actually moved them over to building 2 on lot 2. And we had a bank that was looking at that site, and they got some cold feet given, what's going on. So we relocated that tenant. It's a home improvement retailer, and we're negotiating a lease with them right now. The building is roughly 3,500 square feet. So that change in kind of our orientation with the tenant allowed us then to introduce a drive-through on the south end of building 1. So as Kevin mentioned, that'll come back in December for the conditional use, but that's what precipitated the change. And outside of that, really nothing has changed with the overall concept or the overall plan. So previously we had approved building 1 and the architecture there. We've continued that architecture on to building 2. And if Tracy flips through to the architectural sheets. Yeah, you can go to the next one too as a rendering. So these renderings show the parking lot side, the streets of the project. Like I said, it's a small building, 3,500 square feet. The architecture matches what we're doing on building 1. And you look at that site plan, when someone pulls into the property off of Sarah Lane, these 2 buildings will kind of provide the framework and the structure to pull in. So that's what we're working on here. And again, I think I mentioned with the CSM when that came back before you last month, our goal is to be able to build building 1 and 2 at the same time starting next spring. So that's what we're working diligently on trying to put together. I can answer any questions. Our civil engineer, Kevin Yeska, and our architect, Dustin Dresden, are also on the call if there's some detailed questions anyone has.
Okay, I'll go around the loop here and see if there's people have questions or not. There you all are again. Brian Wallace.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Kristen Runge.
No questions for me.
Jeff is disappointed. I can see it on his face that first 2 people had no questions and he kind of gave a look like, really? Okay, so I'm putting the pressure on you now. Brian Malish.
I live to disappoint you, Chris. No, I don't have any questions. Seems pretty straightforward.
Phil Willems.
No questions yet.
Chris Thomas.
No questions.
Okay, so I don't hear any questions. So Jeff, I'll ask one. Did you start your beard before this project or after when you knew you were going to do it?
You know, time has kind of gotten away from me now, so I can't tell anymore if it was before I started this or not. I feel like I've been working on just the land acquisition for about 2 years now.
So the 2 Chris's on the screen, I think, are the only ones that are not being lazy during COVID because we are shaving for the most part. So outside of that, well, sorry, Kristen, I'm not good.
I shaved today. Can you tell?
It's all good. As far as, no, I don't see any issues with this. It seems to fit very well. Kevin, what are we exactly voting on here tonight, since it changed a little bit?
It'd be a motion to approve the SIP for building number 2 on lot 2 of the Kramer development, subject to all staff comments being resolved to the satisfaction of the village engineer.
Okay, do we have that motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion since we've pretty much vetted this before, so I will make that motion.
Okay, motion by Brian Wallace. Do we have a second?
Second.
By Brian Malish. Any other comments? Raise your hand, please. Seeing none, Tracy, roll call vote, please. And don't make me go first.
Chris Thomas,
Yes.
Chris Zellner,
Yes.
Brian Wallace,
Yes.
Phil Willems,
Yes.
Kristen Runge,
Yes.
and Brian Malish.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thanks, Jeff, for being here. Sorry you had to wait for as long as you did probably to get in here for this, but I appreciate you being here and appreciate your project.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have discuss and take action on specific implementation plans for Jimmy John's Sub Shop, Lot 2, CSM 14673, Kilkenny Commons.
Yeah, just as a quick introduction, and if Tracy, you can bring in Jerry while I'm talking here. Initially we had some concerns at a staff level regarding some things that were still missing from the packet. So we had worked hard with the applicant to make sure they got all their information in, it was properly reviewed. And so that's why some of the information came out a little bit later after the meeting. But I can tell you that at the staff level, we're satisfied. I think the only thing that Jason might touch on, and you may have questions on, is that there's really more parking than what would be needed by our calculations. And I think that's something that we need to keep in mind, maybe not for this phase, but there'll be another phase. And so we can true that up so we don't have, excessive amount of parking than what's going to be needed. But I think our plan commission tends to really look to the owners and the applicants who probably better understand their parking needs than we do, especially when we're providing over parking. But I'm raising it because we did raise it with the Hy-Vee store, and so we're going to raise it again with this one. With that, Jerry, I'm gonna let you talk.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
If Tracy could bring the site plan up, that'd be great. We've been working with the Jimmy John's people for well over a year now, and we originally were going to put in the original site plan for Animart. We had this slated for like a 3,000 square foot building, but the more we looked at it, and it would work, but this just seems like a better fit. Goes right between the bank, the one community bank, and the Animart building. It's just shy of 1,500 square feet, standalone building, drive-through, and with this COVID business going on, the drive-throughs are more necessary than they ever were before. We worked with Jewel Architects, the same people we worked with, and Paul is, I don't know if he's brought into the meeting. He's definitely available. He could raise his hand if he wants to jump in, but they worked with us to design the Animart building and the Boston Pizza, soon to be Buck and Honey's building. And they've been a great people to work with, and I think they did a great job on this building. I guess if anybody has any questions, I'll be here.
Okay, so first and foremost, I'm not going to ask any questions. I'll probably recuse just because I work at the bank next door and parking is maybe an issue. And as long as people aren't parked, or the Jimmy John's isn't parking in the bank, I don't have any issues. But again, I probably should stay out of this one. So I'm going to recuse out of this one and let the rest of the folks make the decision on this one. I will call on people's names and to carry out the motions, but I'm not going to vote. So Brian Wallace, go ahead.
I'm in favor of the project. The only question I really have is, when we look at the PetSmart building there with the roof lines and stuff, and then I know we talked about that with the Quick Trip too that went in there. Is there any concerns one way or the other with the design of this building from that perspective and how it fits with the rest of the buildings around?
Go ahead, Jason. I think
that's
probably
been
answered
vetted,
one. Go ahead.
Kevin. Just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. We did talk about it at staff level, and I'll let Jason elaborate. But we do feel that it fits in with that between the bank and the Animart project. That it's a good, I guess, building spot between the two of those types of structures.
Yeah, just to reiterate and add to that, the palette of materials is good, high quality. There's some consistency there in terms of the stone veneer that you're seeing along the bottom, the use of brick. There's some lap siding in there, or lap siding look. The design, the style is a little bit different. Obviously, this is a flat roof rather than a pitched roof, but the bank is a flat roof. So there's a mix of styles throughout here, but I think the underlying theme that we've been going for is high quality, and I think the building is achieving that end.
Kristen Runge?
That would have been my question too. It looks like it's going to have brick that coordinates at least with the existing Animart building.
Phil Willems?
No real questions. I was just mulling over their trash dumpster area, which is from previous experience in the business, It's an area that has to be really worked on, and I just got to it. And I think it would be all right. So I'll pass.
Okay, Chris Thomas?
I think Kevin might have touched on this right when he opened, but I didn't quite hear. Were there any outstanding issues for the
There's a
village
few
staff?
things I'd like to bring up.
Go ahead then, Jason, if you have a couple things.
One, I just want to highlight, is this the most recent plan set? Can we show the dumpster as the dumpster enclosure in this?
This is Paul Kardatsky. I can bring that up Tracy, I think you've given me the introduction. I'm Paul Kardatsky. Mr. Tierney referred to me earlier. I'm the architect on the project with Jewel Associates. I can share my screen if you want to see the dumpster enclosure. I've got the latest drawings that I think you got.
And yeah, well, that's happening. I can keep talking. So I had suggested that a location further from the road would be more appropriate. The team has pushed back and indicated that this location is really the best to be able to service that, which I understand is kind of a straight shot back through the parking lot there. My concern was that because it's down about 9 feet below the level of the bike path there, without a roof on that dumpster enclosure, you would be seeing the tops of those dumpsters from the road and from the bike path. And so the response in the revised plan set here is to put a shed roof on there with a standing seam metal roof. I think that's an attractive response. To give you a sense of how that ends up sitting relative to the road, my estimate is that that structure then is about 10.5 feet tall and would stick up maybe 18 inches above the level of the bike path, which is lower than the decorative fence that's along there. So you're going to see that from the road, but I don't really have concerns about that. My only remaining concern then with this is that I think this qualifies as a building, and the GDP has a minimum setback from Highway Q of 25 feet. This structure is 20 feet from the right of way. And so I think both you and Village Board need to sign off on that variation from the approved GDP to allow it in that location within the GDP's 25 feet. I believe the zoning ordinance that is standard for commercial zoning only requires 15 feet. Is my recollection of the zoning ordinance. So under conventional zoning would be okay. GDP says 25. That was my primary concern, and just I said I had several. The other was just that we'll be looking for more specificity in the landscaping plan, and I am advising a little bit of tweaking to make sure that plants at maturity aren't growing into the drive-through and can survive. So we're just asking for some refinements on that. Not a major concern. The other is that there isn't clarity on. They've basically submitted what is a full package for signage, but without details on the depth of the building signs. Ordinance requires a maximum of 6 inches in depth, and I think there's a possibility that the Jimmy John's standard signage is deeper than that, and so that's something that U.S. Plan Commission could sign off on, given if a request is made for deeper signs on that wall signage, and I don't know if that's the case or not because that detail was missing.
This is Paul again, and Jimmy John's Corporate has just updated their sign package, so we are waiting for a little additional information. I think we sent you what they just sent us last week, but they said that everything's been refreshed and renewed. But I'm with you. We do need more dimensional information from them on that depth.
Okay, Brian Malish.
Not really any questions unique to what already hasn't been discussed, but when I was reading through the packet, and I think it was hit on at the beginning, of this section about the parking. I guess I had two thoughts. One, I really don't like the dumpster location right along the road there. I get it's down low. The roof helps. Just don't love the spot. So I would have loved to see it maybe over in one of the, there's like about eight or nine stalls, I think, along the southeast bay there. If there's an opportunity to maybe get the dumpster location over there, and then it even nixes a couple of stalls. And then sort of the follow-up to that is, I think in the comments, it mentioned a development to the east that would likely or possibly want to use some of that for overflow. Curious, maybe Jerry, if you could speak a little bit to what's in mind for over on the east side there, and how frequent you see or might foresee that overflow parking being used. Because, then we're kind of looking at a lot of pedestrian traffic across kind of this access road that runs north-south, which I don't love that either. So a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Will dumpster move, nixing a couple stalls? How bad do we really need those extra stalls?
Well, most of the time when you're designing something, that's the biggest problem you have, is how to get enough stalls. And so it's actually a good problem to have for us here, because this will complete basically half of that whole site. And as we were mentioning earlier, with the COVID, the drive-throughs are becoming more of a necessity than they used to be. And we're working right now with a business that would be a pretty heavy traffic intensity business with a drive-through as well. And we know to keep the same square footage of building space as we originally planned, it's going to take up more land, because the drive-throughs do take up more land. And I guess at this point, it's hard for me to say exactly how many stalls we need, but we had it designed before with 0 drive-throughs on the other side, and we just had enough parking stalls. And now with our plans and putting a drive-through on the other side, it's going to be an issue. So I guess, whatever we can get for parking stalls, we'd really like them. And as far as the dumpster, what's really cool about it is that the dumpster truck will be able to drive straight in and do its thing and drive out and around and out, very safe. And we'll put a standing seam metal roof on that'll pretty much match like the Animart building. It's a kind of a bronze, but it's just a good looking color, and you'll drive by and you won't notice it. And the doors on the front look like barn doors. It's just kind of a cool looking thing. I guess I don't think of it as a negative. It's more of a positive when you're driving through. So.
Okay. Did I miss anyone with questions? So as I said, I'm really not going to participate in this one because it's probably inappropriate. So I guess if there's a motion that could be made, or if there's additional questions outside of that.
I'll make a motion to approve per the language in the, I don't have it in front of me. Hold on a second.
You're going to say as recommended by staff. We can pick
Motion
up
to
on
approve
this.
SIP for Jimmy John's Sub Shop, subject to all staff comments being resolved, including the signage, to the satisfaction of the village engineer.
Okay, motion by Brian Wallace. Do we have a second?
Second.
Oh,
Okay, I've got Phil Willems with a second. Any other comments from folks? Raise your hand. Chris Thomas?
so Jason, do we have to make a decision now on the setback for the dumpster?
So the site plan is proposed, includes that setback. If you're approving the SIP, we aren't as staff, I think, recommending that it move at this point. And so you would, the motion to address our comments would leave it where it is, and you would be approving it. And it's my interpretation of the GDP that it has to go past board too.
Jason, it's also a recommendation to the village board to approve an amendment to the GDP.
Okay, any other questions? Please raise your hand. Okay, seeing none. Oh, Kristen Rangi, go ahead.
Yeah, so then we're basically saying that that dumpster container cannot move to the other side and it's going to be on the main road right there with this plan. Am I reading
Correct.
the site plan correctly?
Yes, I would say that's what you're voting on today. And if that's not the case, then we should probably make a clarification. But the way I'm interpreting is that the dumpster location would stay there, and it's implied that they're going to need to get approval from the village board in order to have that structure within that setback requirement.
Okay, and we're also waiving the sign requirements?
Not waiving them, they would need to comply with our sign requirements, or they're going to have to come back with the revisions in terms of that depth. But what we've asked for is that you allow us to administratively approve the signage if it's consistent with what you've seen tonight. And of course, that it needs to comply with all our dimensioning standards and size requirements.
Okay.
And it does, based on everything else we've seen. We just don't have clarity on the depth.
But if the depth, Jason, what you're saying though, if the depth is not compliant, they will need to come back for that.
Okay.
I think I made that part of the motion too, as far as the signage.
Phil, do you agree to that for your second?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so then I will call to question. Tracy, a roll call vote, please.
Brian Wallace,
Yes.
Chris Thomas,
Yes.
Phil Willems,
Yes.
Brian Malish,
Yes.
Kristen Runge,
Yes.
Chris Zellner.
Abstain.
Motion carried.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, last on our list for our business here, discuss and take action on 2 certified survey maps to adjust internal lot lines of lots 54 through 59 and outlot 7 Heritage Hills subdivision. Kevin?
We looked at these as almost being administratively comfortable to approve. They're doing some lot line adjustments in order to fit some proposed buildings that Viridian is making. I think the only concern we had at staff level, and I've added it here as a staff recommendation, is that we get all the easements that are necessary that are moved properly. So the motion is to recommend approval subject to the satisfaction of the village engineer and the utility manager signing off on certified survey map.
So no issues from tech staff or anyone with regards to this as far as moving these?
No, these are just minor changes in order, really what they're doing is just adjusting it. So I think the width of some of their models or their building footprints fit better on these lots.
Okay, then I would see if there's any other, if you have a question or comment, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve, subject to the satisfaction of all staff comments, to the satisfaction of the village engineer and approval of the utility manager.
Motion by Chris Thomas.
Second.
Second by Phil Willems. Any other comments? Raise your hand, please. Okay, seeing none, roll call vote, please, Tracy.
Chris Zellner,
Yes.
Brian Wallace,
Yes.
Chris Thomas,
Yes.
Brian Malish,
Yes.
Phil Willems,
Yes.
Kristen Runge.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, Waunakee Westport Joint Plan Commission update. Discussion recommendation on certified survey map for Baki 5687 Cobblestone Lane. Kevin?
Yeah, Tracy can bring it up, but it really doesn't have any impact on Village of Waunakee. Somebody's just taking 2 lots and making it one to build a big house. So, and the other things that are on our joint planning commission that will be on tomorrow night are the Jimmy John's and I forgot the other one, Tracy, but she'll have it.
Project Woodland Drive or Woodland Crest. Okay.
Right, thank you. Yeah.
So as far
Jeff
as
Kramer's.
the certified survey map for Baki, they want to take 2 lots and make them into 1?
That's the other way around there, Chris. That's an existing lot. Their house was there. This actually came to us here a few months back.
Yeah. Thanks, Brian.
They want to split that lot off so they can make it a buildable lot.
Okay.
And actually, I think if I understood correctly, at that time, Baki's currently live in the house and they're going to build a new house and then sell that property.
Okay. Do we need any motions with this, Kevin, or just direction?
Just direction.
I don't see a problem with it. Does anyone else see a problem with it or have any concerns to let our joint plan members know? Okay, seeing none. Dr. Ranum has a favorite motion that he likes to make at all of our board meetings. Who would like to make the motion tonight?
In Bill Ranum's absence, I'd like to make a motion, we adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn by Phil Owens. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Brian Malish. Any other comments? I will say thank you, and also to give my shout out and well wishes to Bill Fredericks, who had an accident over the weekend. He's okay, but just keep him in your thoughts. So he got a little banged up. So that said, first and a second, roll call vote, please. Tracy.
With Kristen Runge first this time.
Yes.
Phil Willems.
Yes.
Brian Malish.
Yes.
Chris Thomas.
Yes.
Brian Wallace.
Yes.
Chris Zellner.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great Thanksgiving, and we'll see you guys next month.
Thank you. You as well.
So long.
Good night, Gracie.